Namaskar. India and Vietnam signed 7 agreements for cooperation in defense, petrochemicals, nuclear energy. A joint vision also for peace and prosperity was unveiled. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that India sees its relationship with Vietnam as a long-term and strategic partner with peace, stability and prosperity as common objectives in the Indo-Pacific region. So that's going to be in focus tonight, and we'll also be focusing on concerns and challenges that may arise from that mutant COVID strain. My name is Mark Lin. Let's begin with the headlines. India and Vietnam hold virtual bilateral summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi describes Vietnam as an important pillar of India's Act East policy and a significant partner in the Indo-Pacific region. The two sides released a joint vision document and signed 7 important pacts. Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls for keeping humanity at the core of policies, addresses the 6th India-Japan Dialogue Conference and says that innovation is the mainstay of human empowerment. India suspends all flights to and from the United Kingdom till December the 31st. All passengers transiting from UK to be tested for COVID-19 at the airports upon arrival. Union Health Ministry holds high-level meeting to review the situation arising out of emergence of the new strain of COVID-19. Health Minister assures people not to panic, said that the government is closely monitoring the situation. Most nations close borders with Britain as the new coronavirus strain breeds panic. France blocks its borders with UK. The EU holds an emergency meeting in Brussels to review the emergent situation. Australia reports 2 cases of the mutant virus from UK. Government unveils the new electricity rules. The new rules give more power to consumers. Discoms must now give new connections in 7 days in metro cities, 15 days in other towns, and within 30 days of application in rural areas. In a major step towards sustaining peace and bringing an end to militancy in Assam, 64 militants, including the Deputy Chief of Ulfa I, Drishtri Ahom, surrender in Guwahati in the presence of the Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to address the centenary celebrations of the Aligarh Muslim University on Tuesday. This will be the first time since 1964 that a Prime Minister of India will be addressing this prestigious university. India records a 60% increase in the population of leopards. The number of leopards in the country has gone up to 12,852. The status of leopards in India 2018 report was released by the Union Environment Minister. The world witnesses a rare celestial spectacle, Grand Conjunction, which happens once in 400 years. The 2 largest planets of the solar system, Jupiter and Saturn, appear as conjoined in the night sky. Stargazers make special preparations to witness this phenomenon. Our top story, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Vietnamese counterpart Nguyen Xuan Phuc held a virtual meeting. Vietnam agreed on India's proposals for a further defense line of credit, and 7 agreements were signed by the 2 countries. They cover diverse sectors such as defense, nuclear power, petrochemicals, renewable energy and treatment of cancer. Let's look at this report. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc held a virtual meeting on Monday. Prime Minister Modi called Vietnam a key partner of India's Indo-Pacific vision and said that India considers its ties with Vietnam in the long-term and strategic view. PM Narendra Modi said that Vietnam is an important pillar of India's Act East policy and a vital partner of its Indo-Pacific vision.
हम वियतनाम के साथ अपने संबंधों को एक लॉन्ग टर्म और स्ट्रेटेजिक व्यू से देखते हैं। इंडो पैसिफिक रीजन में पीस, स्टेबिलिटी एंड प्रॉस्पेरिटी हमारे साझा उद्देश्य हैं। इस क्षेत्र में स्थिरता और शांति कायम रखने के लिए हमारी साझेदारी महत्वपूर्ण योगदान दे सकती है।
India and Vietnam reviewed various dimensions of comprehensive strategic partnership and released a joint vision document and plan of action for bilateral engagement between 2021 and 2023. PM Modi highlighted that the world will get a strong message of the depth of India-Vietnam relationship with a joint vision for peace, prosperity and people.
वैश्विक स्तर पर कई चुनौतियों के बारे में और हमारे क्षेत्र के भविष्य के बारे में हमारे विचारों में समानता है और हम साथ मिलकर अपने साझा मूल्यों को आगे बढ़ा सकते हैं। अगले साल हम दोनों संयुक्त राष्ट्र की सुरक्षा परिषद में एक साथ सदस्य होंगे और इसलिए वैश्विक मंच पर हमारे सहयोग का महत्व भी और भी बढ़ जाता है।
During the virtual meet between both the leaders, 7 new agreements were signed in various areas like defense, scientific research, nuclear energy, petrochemicals, renewable energy, healthcare.
7 development projects completed with Indian grant in aid assistance of $1.5 million for the benefit of local community in Vietnam's Ninh Thuan province were handed over. Also, our new focus on renewable energy. An MOU for partnership between our solar industry federations underline this intent. The summit provided an opportunity to hand over 1 high-speed guard boat to Vietnam, launch of 2 other vessels manufactured in India, and keel-laying 7 vessels being manufactured in Vietnam under the $100 million defense line of credit extended by Government of India.
The meeting takes place at a time when both countries and other countries in the region have been grappling with China's aggressive actions. Both India and Vietnam will assume roles as non-permanent members of the UNSC in 2021. Prime Minister called for a rules-based order in the South China Sea.
Both leaders also spoke of the importance of promoting a rules-based order in the region, including by upholding international law, especially the UNCLOS. The leaders affirmed that a peaceful, stable, secure, free, open, inclusive and rules-based region is in the common interest of all countries. Prime Minister stressed that the Code of Conduct negotiations on the South China Sea should not prejudice the interests of other countries in the region.
Addressing the virtual meet, the Prime Minister of Vietnam thanked India for the line of credit given by India for defence cooperation. PM Phuc said that the virtual summit underlines the commitment of both countries to further deepening the bilateral relations.
I thank you for your kind remarks about the relations between Vietnam and India, and also the kind remarks about Vietnam. I thank you very much for the kind sympathy and assistance to Vietnam to recover from the devastating floods in central provinces of Vietnam.
Meanwhile, India has sent aid for food-devastated central Vietnam, for which Vietnam Prime Minister thanked Prime Minister Modi. This is the 9th such virtual summit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the first with an ASEAN country. Arun Sharma's report, DD India. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the India-Japan Samvad conference. The Prime Minister spoke on a range of issues from humanism to collaboration and not confrontation. The Prime Minister proposed a library on Buddhist literature, a call for growing and rising together. Let's listen.
Samvad has traveled from New Delhi to Tokyo, from Yangon to Ulaanbaatar. In this journey, it has remained true to its fundamental objectives: to encourage dialogue and debate, to highlight our shared values of democracy, humanism, ahimsa, freedom and tolerance, and to carry forward our ancient tradition of spiritual and scholarly exchanges. I would like to propose the creation of a library of all such traditional Buddhist literature and scriptures. We will be happy to create such a facility in India and will provide appropriate resources for it. The library will not only be a depository of literature, it will also be a platform for research and dialogue, a true samvad between human beings, between societies, and between man and nature. Its research mandate will also include examining how Buddhist message can guide our modern world against contemporary challenges. This is the first samvad of a new decade. It is happening at a critical moment of human history. Our actions today will shape the discourse in the coming times. This decade and beyond will belong to these societies that place a premium on learning and innovating together. Learning should be such that furthers innovation. Societies that are open-minded, democratic, and transparent are better suited to innovate. Therefore, now is the time, more than ever before, to change the paradigm on what we see as growth. Discussions on global growth cannot happen only between a few. Growth patterns must follow a human-centric approach. In the past, humanity took the path of confrontation instead of collaboration. From imperialism to the world wars, from the arms race to the space race, we had a dialogues, but they were aimed at pulling others down. Now, let us rise together. Lord Buddha's teachings command the strength to turn the discourse from enmity to empowerment.
So that brings us to In Focus tonight, and this is In Focus. Pillars of India's Act East policy in focus, and joining us for a discussion on this we have Anil Wadhwa, former Ambassador and Secretary East, Ministry of External Affairs. Thank you, Ambassador Wadhwa. Let's start with the way the Prime Minister has described the Vietnam as a pillar of India's Act East policy. To what extent would you look at this description in the light of both the countries becoming members, non-permanent members of the UN Security Council from next year onwards?
Well, you're absolutely right, because Vietnam is one of those countries with whom the relationship of India has continued to grow progressively, starting from the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership which we entered into in 2016 when Prime Minister Modi was in Vietnam. And thereafter we've had a series of bilateral engagements, and every time the two countries meet, there is progressive incremental change in this relationship. I think Vietnam has become very important for India for 2 or 3 very important reasons. One is that both India and Vietnam face a threat from China. India on its borders and Vietnam in the South China Sea. In fact, Indian interests are also affected as far as oil exploration with Vietnam is concerned because of the illegal claims that China has put forward. Second issue is the question of Vietnam joining some very important regional treaties in the trade and investment field. Vietnam is now part of RCEP, and also it is going to become a very important country as far as regional value chains are concerned, already is. And if India is to expand its interests in the region, having not joined RCEP, Vietnam becomes a very important player. Thirdly, India and Vietnam, as you rightly said, are joining the UN Security Council together for a 2-year term where they can cooperate because their worldview is similar, especially as far as regional issues are concerned. And both of them can complement each other, support each other, and take forward this agenda of progressiveness, which both Prime Minister Modi and Vietnamese Prime Minister today talked about.
And when we talk about strategic partnership, it's been a strategic partnership since 2016, and one looks at strategic partnerships mostly from the dimension of the defense cooperation, and we see that there is a growing defense cooperation between these two countries. Put this into perspective for us, and what do we hope to achieve in terms of this defense cooperation?
Well, the problem of threats in the region were realized by India and Vietnam, some years ago, and that is a time when this defense cooperation actually started. And if you look at the time when we extended the lines of cooperation, lines of credit to Vietnam in the defense field, that goes back a few years, and it started from Vietnam expressing its apprehensions about the regional security situation, especially emanating from activities of China in the South China Sea. So I'm very glad that India has been a supportive partner of Vietnam in this endeavor. And starting from the first line of credit, which we've already extended and we are fulfilling, as we saw today, there were a number of announcements which were made, in terms of what has happened in terms of that $100 million line of credit for defense. But in addition, another $500 million line of credit has been agreed upon, which will basically concentrate on information technology and creating the necessary infrastructure in Vietnam, which will be beneficial for the region as well as for Vietnam and for India.
If we look at the Prime Minister's comments at the India-Japan Samvad, the Prime Minister spoke largely of human-centric approaches, of Buddhist connections, of peace, of growing together. These are the goals one could see that perhaps could be fitted into the Act East policy. And looking at both Japan and Vietnam probably being pillars in this process, because the Prime Minister also attributed peace and stability to the joint vision, with Vietnam.
Yes, you're right, because, as far as the today's dialogue with Japan was concerned, this is, of course, the sixth in the series.
Yes.
When this dialogue started, it started on the four basic premises of freedom, democracy, respect for human rights, as well as peaceful resolution of disputes, which we find a commonality in as far as Hinduism, Buddhism are concerned. And then, of course, the countries of this region who believe in Buddhism worked with India together and put forward a number of concepts to take this forward over the last 5 dialogues. Today's was the 6th such dialogue. You're right in making a linkage between what is happening there as far as this Samvad process between India and Japan is concerned, and what is happening in East Asia and the East Asia Act East policy of India, given the fact that we have a situation where the stability part and the security part of this region has actually deteriorated, mainly because of threats from our neighboring country, China.
Yes.
And in this situation, I think there are a number of countries who think alike. They want to operate in a situation which is secure and stable, open, and that's what they stressed about today in the bilateral dialogue in the summit between India and Vietnam. Now, if you connect that with what is happening in the Samvad, I think the basic principles remain the same. And India and Japan have already expressed these principles since 2014.
Sure.
And they still stand today, and they're very valid.
It's a critical time in history, and the Prime Minister has referred to that also in the Samvad. We understand the world has just gone through COVID. We have this common threat, from an aggressive China in this region. There are so many concerns because of the environment. There's a greater need for countries to work closer and with these kind of ideals, to bring peace, stability, a human-centric approach with laudable goals in mind. Does this, does it sound too idealistic, or can it become a realistic agenda?
I think it's not idealistic. It may seem idealistic, but it's a very realistic agenda in today's circumstances, especially in the post-COVID world.
Yes.
And that's why India has been at the forefront of projecting a humanistic approach to multilateralism, a humanistic approach to how you deal with others. Because unless you think about others and carry others with you, you will not be able to succeed in the current circumstances. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us that unless the world works together, it will be a very difficult world that we have to navigate, especially in terms of vaccine, working together in health issues and making sure that countries cooperate with each other to get over this difficult situation. And that same concept will come in very shortly, I'm sure, in the economic field as well, where countries will have to work together to make sure that everybody comes through this as very stronger than before. Otherwise, it's a very difficult situation that the world is going to face.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Anil Badwa, for joining us and putting into context the Prime Minister's interaction both with participation in the bilateral summit with Vietnam and in the India-Japan Samvad conference. Now moving on to our next story, India suspends all flights to and from the UK till December 31, and all passengers transiting from the UK will be tested for COVID-19 at the airports upon their arrival after the Union Health Ministry held a high-level meeting to review the situation arising out of the emergence of the new strain of COVID-19. The Health Minister has assured people they should not be panicking. Meanwhile, most of the nations close to the borders to Britain, the EU, they've held that emergency meeting in Brussels to review the situation that has come about. Let's take a look at this report.
सरकार हर बात के लिए पूरी तरह से सजग है और जैसे पिछले एक साल में आपने देखा कि सरकार ने आवश्यकता के अनुरूप जनता के हितों की रक्षा करने के लिए जो जिस समय पर आवश्यकता किया। जनवरी के महीने में भी कभी किसी भी स्टेज पे किसी भी सप्ताह में ऐसा समय आ सकता है जब हम भारत के लोगों को पहला जो वैक्सीन का शॉट है वो देने की स्थिति में आ जाए।
कोविड-19 महामारी के खिलाफ जहां ब्रिटेन में टीकाकरण शुरू हो चुका है, तो वहीं कोविड का नया स्ट्रेन तेजी से वायरस फैला रहा है। इसे देखते हुए भारत के स्वास्थ्य मंत्रालय ने सोमवार को एक उच्च स्तरीय बैठक कर स्थिति का आकलन किया। मंत्रालय ने आश्वस्त किया कि ब्रिटेन में उपजी स्थिति से डरने और घबराने की जरूरत नहीं है। भारत सरकार अपने नागरिकों को सुरक्षित रखने के हर संभव कदम उठाने को तैयार है और संभवतः जनवरी में भारत में टीकाकरण भी शुरू हो जाएगा। कोरोना वायरस के नए स्ट्रेन के चलते केंद्र सरकार ने ब्रिटेन से आने जाने वाली सभी फ्लाइट को 31 दिसंबर तक रद्द कर दिया है।
अभी तक जो हमारे पास जानकारी है, दिस ओनली अप्लाइज टू केसेस इन द यूनाइटेड किंगडम, और जब हम इसको रिव्यू करेंगे 31 दिसंबर से पहले और ये फैसला करेंगे कि ये
We regret that we've run the wrong report there in the wrong language, but we shall get you the English report in a short while. But let me tell you what the current situation is with regard to the vaccine update in India. So we know that the process of preclinical and clinical trials for all vaccines are currently on in the country. In fact, 6 vaccine candidates are undergoing trial in India, and 3 vaccine manufacturers have also been asked for additional data, and this is for the last stage of the trials so that they can be considered and be cleared also as candidates for emergency use when the government decides that. The authorities concerned. Also, the Ministry of External Affairs has received about 12 requests from about 12 countries for vaccines over there. Well, let's look at those companies that have applied for emergency use. Covishield, which is manufactured by the Serum Institute of India, has applied for emergency use, and Covaxin, which is manufactured by Bharat Biotech, has also applied for emergency use. These are the vaccines that are in clinical trials. That's Zycov-D, which is manufactured by Zydus Cadila, and also Sputnik 5, which is manufactured by Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. And there's another vaccine, NYX-CoV 2373, which is another vaccine which is in trials by the Serum Institute of India. There are some vaccines that are in preclinical trials, And this is the recombinant protein antigen-based vaccine by Biological E, the mRNA-based HGCO-19 vaccine by Genova, Pune, the inactivated rabies vector platform vaccine also by Bharat Biotech. So the government has given us an assurance. The top priority is safety and effectiveness of the vaccines. That's non-compromised. It's not going to be compromised on. And also, the government is geared up for the launch of the vaccine of COVID-19 soon. Any week in January is what the minister said. First vaccination to be done. And the vaccinations for COVID-19 stated to be voluntary now. Advisable that we should receive complete vaccination schedule before we make any further decisions. Well, let's take a look at the target population. So first, after consultation with experts, 30 crore people have been prioritized, and they consist of health workers and frontline workers at the forefront. The frontline workers are police, also military, sanitation staff. These are the frontline workers. We know who the health workers are. They are doctors and medical staff. And well, also we have people above the age of 50. They come into an important priority category. And those who are below 50 but have certain comorbidities and diseases, they also come into a top priority. But how quickly will the vaccine be rolled out? The Minister of State with independent charge for civil aviation, who's part of the GOM, said today that if we start by January, then we're hoping to vaccinate 30 crore people by July. So let's go back to that report then and take a look at the COVID situation in the country.
ये सब इमेजिनरी सिचुएशंस, इमेजिनरी बातें, इमेजिनरी पैनिक, इन सब के अंदर आप अपने आप को मत उलझाइए। सरकार हर बात के लिए पूरी तरह से सजग है। जनवरी के महीने में भी कभी किसी भी स्टेज पे, किसी भी सप्ताह में ऐसा समय आ सकता है जब हम भारत के लोगों को पहला जो वैक्सीन का शॉट है वो देने की स्थिति में आ जाए।
Union Health Minister reassuring the country that health authorities remain vigilant and prepared to deal with the new, more transmissible strain of the coronavirus identified in Britain, adding that there was no need to panic. He also announced that the COVID-19 vaccine may be ready to roll out in India as early as January 2021. A high-level meeting in the Health Ministry discussed the new strain. The country WHO representative was also present in the meeting. A decision to suspend all flights originating from UK to India till 31st December 2020 was taken. Further, as a measure of abundant precaution, passengers arriving from UK in all transit flights, including flights that have taken off or flights which are reaching India before 22nd December at 23:59 hours, will have to take a mandatory RT-PCR test on arrival at the airports concerned.
अभी तक जो हमारे पास जानकारी है, दिस ओनली अप्लाइज टू केसेस इन द यूनाइटेड किंगडम, और जब हम इसको रिव्यू करेंगे 31 दिसंबर से पहले और ये फैसला करेंगे कि ये जो टेम्परेरी सस्पेंशन है इसको रिव्यू करना चाहिए, हटाना चाहिए, नहीं, उसके बाद वो जब सर्विसेज रिज्यूम होंगी तो मुझे पूरी उम्मीद है उनको ट्रैवल की सुविधा दी जाएगी।
यहाँ इस प्रकार की कोई बढ़ोतरी की स्थिति अभी तक नहीं पाई गई है, जांच प्रक्रिया में है, और उसको देखते हुए एहतियात तौर पर हम लोगों ने सारी व्यवस्था खत्म किया है। कोई घबराने की जरूरत नहीं है, कोई पैनिक होने की जरूरत नहीं है, इसको बराबर ध्यान रखने की आवश्यकता है।
Meanwhile, authorities in the UK are working on a war footing to contain the spread of the mutant strain of the COVID-19 virus. London and most of southeast England have entered a Tier 4 lockdown. Over 30 countries have announced a ban on travel from UK till 31st.
And there have been thousands of variants of coronavirus. It's just that the particular one that we've seen in Kent and London, the thing which has led to the Tier 4 lockdown, is a particularly virulent variant of the virus. So it means that it spreads more easily. We've detected that first, but we know already that the cases have been found in continental Europe and other countries, including countries which have placed travel bans.
France has announced a ban on all forms of transport from UK. However, on a reassuring note, it has said that the supply of coronavirus vaccines to UK will not be impacted. French Health Minister also said that the mutation will not impact the efficacy of vaccines. Germany's foreign minister said that the European Union needs to respond jointly and in a coordinated fashion to the new coronavirus strain.
At this stage, if there is a variation in the DNA or the RNA of the virus, then scientists would have to evolve a new vaccine, but this is not the case currently.
It is extremely important to us that there be a coordinated European approach, which is why we immediately activated the European Crisis Reaction Mechanism. The relevant coordination meeting is happening.
Australia said on Monday it had detected cases of the new virulent coronavirus strain identified in the UK. 2 travellers from the United Kingdom to Australia's New South Wales state were found carrying the mutated variant of the virus that Britain has said could be up to 70% more infectious. While the mutation possesses an additional challenge, the basic rules to contain the COVID-19 pandemic remain the same. Practice social distancing, wear a mask and wash hands frequently, but perhaps with added vigilance and emphasis. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
So that brings us to our second point in focus tonight, and this is the COVID Mutant Challenge. The COVID Mutant Challenge. To discuss this, we have Dr. Ganga Kedkar, the Dr. C.G. Pandit National Chair of the ICMR, and Professor Randeep Guleria, Director of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. Dr. Ganga Kedkar, how serious is the concern of mutations? You know, reports say that the virus has been mutating quite a lot, about twice every month, and there are several variants of it. So, I mean, what's particular about this one in particular, sir?
Mutations, by and large, need not all the time be having some kind of significant impact. However, in this particular mutation is little surprising in the sense that it is also associated with another 20 odd mutations, and this has happened for a virus which has a different kind of a natural history. It lives for a very short period in the body, and we don't have drugs essentially working against this virus. So it's something which is a cause of concern, which is only for the scientist consumption. Do we think that it could affect India as such? To me, you know, if you look at it, that this virus, if it is only claimed to be transmitting little faster, if it is not causing any kind of severe COVID disease and perhaps impacting the mortality rates, there is not much to worry. We also need to remember that whatever mutation which we have seen, that mutation is unlikely to impact vaccination strategy. The ones even that are shortlisted in India, and even the subunit vaccine that may also come in India, we don't expect any kind of impact of this particular virus. It is only going to tell us one thing, that the impact of it coming and increasing cases can be reduced if we keep on following the COVID appropriate behaviors for a longer period of time.
But Dr. Guleria, you know, we are men in the news, so we notice coincidences. So this new strain of the virus has come at a time when the vaccinations have started. I mean, is there a correlation, one would ask a question, or is there a scientific explanation to this, or is it just a coincidence?
So I think it's a coincidence. It's unlikely that the vaccination will cause this effect, because the vaccination has not been rolled out in such a large extent that the vaccine will cause the virus to start behaving or trying to have some degree of emergence of a mutant strain which will try and protect itself from the vaccinated individuals in terms of sustaining its viability. So I think it's a coincidence. This is just the factor that it is an observation which has been made in the UK, in London and the southern part of England, that they saw a spurt in the number of cases there, an increase in number of cases. And then when they looked at this with the genetic sequence data, they found that wherever there was this variant was the dominant one, there was increase in the number of cases, although there was no increase in the mortality or in hospital admissions. So what it basically means is that this is an observation which was made in England, that there is a variation which may be linked to increasing number of cases, and this was flagged by the government. And I think we need to get more data before we are sure that this is a cause and effect and that this is a major cause of concern.
Right.
As has already been said, it's unlikely that it will have a major impact as far as the vaccine is concerned.
Dr. Ganga Ketkar, so the vaccines are targeting the spike protein. I mean, is it possible that mutations can try and avoid that? I mean, it's because that's the big concern. I mean, will the vaccine finally work? I mean, everyone seems to suggest that the vaccines will still continue to work even on this mutation. Is that the case?
See, this is only one mutation in the spike protein. Now, all the vaccines that we are currently looking at shortlisting are those vaccines which would have complete sequences of the spike protein itself. So even if there is a small tweak, even if there is a small change in a protein or a peptide, in the peptides itself, it is unlikely to make a difference for the body to react against this particular spike protein which will be given by the vaccine. If it was to make any kind of difference, it would perhaps have made in subunit vaccines. But subunit vaccines that are being produced for this particular virus tend to have 16 different peptide sequences, and therefore it is unlikely that it would be impacted by a small change that is there. We need only about 5 to 6 peptides even if the subunit vaccine was to be effective. So vaccines, I really don't think that it will impact, at least in the short run, of about 2 or 3 years' time.
Dr. Guleria, so the report suggests that this mutation is actually spreading much faster, 70% faster than the earlier variant. How much of a concern is this in a country like ours, which is where we have such a population? We've also tried to keep our social distancing norms in place. We are trying to wear our masks. Will all this continue to work when when there's evidence that suggests that the virus is spreading faster?
So it's all the more reason that we have COVID appropriate behavior. What is being shown is that this virus may be spreading faster, it may be more infectious, although it is not causing higher mortality as far as the new variant is concerned. But no matter what be the variation that we see, COVID appropriate behavior will protect us against any of these variations. So if we were to wear a mask and protect ourselves from getting the infection, if we were to have physical distancing and have good hand washing, then even if it was a more infectious strain, we will be able to protect ourselves. Therefore, I think it's all the more important that we really re-emphasize that COVID appropriate behavior still has to be kept in mind. We have to avoid crowding, because if we have a new strain emerging, then the only way that we can control it till the vaccine is available to our population is to have this COVID appropriate behavior.
Indeed. Dr. Ganga Ketkar, with regard to the success rate we've had in terms of our low fatality rate and the high recovery rate, the people who have had this virus and have recovered, they have the antibodies, and they believe that, and even some reports suggest that they may not really be requiring to have the vaccine in a hurry. So are these people also at risk of, in case this virus manages to spread, and just in a hypothetical scenario, are they likely to get the virus?
At present, the kind of virus that we are talking about, they have only reported about 4 cases of reinfection, which to my mind may not necessarily represent that reinfections will become common with this particular virus, because it's just one change in the virus at N501Y site. Now, what is more important for us to understand is, though the reinfection rates may not go high, but continuing this behavior is important for us. COVID appropriate behaviors are extremely important for one simple reason, that within a span of 10 months or 11 months, we are finding that the virus has accumulated many mutations. The reasons why it has accumulated so many mutations, which may not be related to only spike protein, but they may be in the other regions, we need to investigate that part. And we need to be having a caution that we need to follow the COVID appropriate behavior as well, so that we are not exposed to even the risk of reinfection if you have acquired COVID infection in the past.
Dr. Guleria, so obviously, I mean, the whole world has been watching this virus, and scientists and doctors and people in research have all been looking at it very closely, and that's why we've noticed these mutations taking place so fast. Is it possible, that with the number of mutations that are coming up, that this virus is something that is a little different, something that we haven't seen in the past? The manner in which its mutations are taking place, or all viruses mutate like this?
All viruses mutate, and even if you look at influenza virus, which is another respiratory virus, it mutates much more quickly, and it has what we call an antigenic drift. And sometimes there's a major mutation which is causing an antigenic shift. So we know that viruses do mutate, and this is to be expected because this is how viruses inherently behave. So this is not something new. It's only that now science has progressed so much, our networking is so good, our way of detecting mutations has become so strong, and we're able to collaborate so well that any mutation that is seen globally gets reported much more faster. And there are so many centers. For example, this was just picked up by the COVID-19 Genomic UK Center.
Yes.
They were based on the variation that they were studying, and this was picked up in September. But that point in time, they did not think that it was causing too many cases. It's only in December that when they looked at the data, they realized that wherever there was increasing number of cases, this variant was also being seen as the dominant variant. So I think it's more of the science and the advancement that has happened in technology which is helping us, rather than this virus behaving differently than how viruses have behaved in the past.
Indeed, and Dr. Ganga Ketkar, we've been talking about it being a race against time, and the fact that vaccines have come out so fast, people are concerned that perhaps we move too fast. But if we don't move fast, then it's difficult to get life back on track, and people are concerned now. Are we going to go back into a lockdown phase? It's going to have an impact on the economy, the same thing that happened in 2020. So what would you say? Is this going to have an impact on the vaccine distribution and the inoculation program?
I don't think it will have any impact on vaccine distribution or inoculation program, because the rate limiting step for vaccine delivery is the number of doses that are available to roll them out. So essentially it would mean that as the dosages would be available, we have the best healthcare infrastructure to actually handle delivery of this vaccine to the largest proportion that we can in a given period of time. India is perhaps in the best position to offer or scale up the vaccine delivery in the best possible way. So to me, it is not going to affect the vaccine delivery by any means.
Okay, a final word from you, Dr. Guleria. So by July of next year, this is the hope, we would have some sort of herd immunity against this virus in our country?
Hopefully we will have vaccinated a sufficient number of people to be able to get some degree of herd immunity, and there would be a large number of people who have got the infection and have already got some degree of neutralizing antibodies as far as they are concerned. And if we combine that too, we should have a sufficient mass of people who would be able to break the chain of transmission, and that should substantially bring down the number of cases. Also, by that time, you would have vaccinated the higher risk groups, and therefore our mortality should have also come down significantly. So I think by the middle of next year, we should hopefully be in a much better position.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Guleria and Dr. Ganga Ketkar, for helping us understand the challenge that the country faces, and the world, in fact, with this new mutant version of the coronavirus. Let's move on to our next story then. India recorded a 60% increase in the population of leopards. The Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar announced on Monday, releasing the Status of Leopards in India 2018 report. In New Delhi, the Union Minister said that the number of leopards in the country has gone up to 12,852.
Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar on Monday released the status report of leopards in India. The estimation of leopards in the country went on simultaneously with the fourth cycle of the All India Tiger Estimation. India now has 12,852 leopards as compared to the previous estimate of 7,910 conducted in 2014. More than 60% increase in the population has been recorded. The states of Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka and Maharashtra recorded the highest leopard estimates at 3,421, 1,783 and 1,690 respectively.
2014 में 8,000 तेंदुआ थे, अब 12,000 बन गए। शेरों की संख्या में भी इजाफा, बाघों की संख्या में भी इजाफा और तेंदुओं की संख्या में भी इजाफा। ये दर्शाता है कि हम इकोलॉजी का, पर्यावरण का और उसके साथ साथ जीव विविधता का अच्छा ख्याल रख रहे हैं। हमारी जंगल व्यवस्था ठीक है और इसलिए ये प्राणी इतनी बड़ी तादाद में बढ़ रहे हैं।
Spatial data on individual leopard photo captures was used in combination with spatial data on prey, habitat and anthropogenic factors to arrive at leopard population estimates for each tiger landscape.
We deploy camera traps, and these camera traps, when they are deployed, they capture the photographs of not only tigers but all other animals. Similarly, this leopard photographs, their pattern of rosette, that spots on the skin of leopards, they are unique. So based on their unique pattern of spots on skin, we could identify the unique leopards, and based on analysis, we have come out with the figure of All India Tiger estimation of leopards in tiger range states only, with a figure, and that has shown a remarkable increase in this population.
In India, tiger is not only a conservation icon but also act as an umbrella species for majority of ecoregions in the Indian subcontinent. Securing tiger thus safeguard micro niches in the forest ecosystem, which conserve the life forms at the smallest levels, ensuring water and climate security. Tapush Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the centenary celebrations of the Aligarh Muslim University on the 22nd of December at 11 a.m. This will happen via video conference. The Prime Minister will release a postal stamp at the event. The Chancellor of the University, His Holiness Sayyidina Mufaddal Saifuddin, and the Education Minister, Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank, will be present on the occasion. The government has decided to constitute a high-level committee to commemorate the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. This high-level committee will decide on the activities for the one-year-long commemoration, which starts on the 23rd of January 2021. The high-level committee will be headed by the Union Home Minister, Amit Shah. The commemoration is being held as a tribute and as a mark of gratitude to the colossal contribution that Netaji made to India's freedom struggle. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the government will soon commence the 125th Jayanti celebrations of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. In a tweet, the Prime Minister said that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's bravery is well known, a scholar, soldier, statesman par excellence. We are soon to commence his 125th Jayanti celebrations. For that, a high-level committee has been formed. Come, let us mark this special occasion in a grand manner. Counting of votes for the elections to the DDCs of Jammu and Kashmir, that's the District Development Councils, will take place on Tuesday. All arrangements have been put in place for this counting, and it will begin at 9 a.m. across the Union Territory. And there are 2,181 candidates who are contesting for 280 seats.
In Jammu and Kashmir, all arrangements are in place for the counting of votes in all 280 District Development Council constituencies. Counting will begin at 9 a.m. on Tuesday simultaneously across all districts. Fate of 2,181 candidates for 280 DDC seats will be decided on Tuesday.
जीतने वाले जो या फर्स्ट या सेकंड रनर अप रहेंगे उन कैंडिडेट्स उन सभी की सिक्योरिटी को इसमें हमने कंसिडर किया हुआ है। साथ साथ जहाँ पे सेंसिटिव एरियाज है, प्लेसेस है, विलेजेस है, वहाँ पे भी स्पेशल टीम्स लगाई है, स्पेशल क्यूआरटीज वहाँ पे रखी है लॉ एंड ऑर्डर मोड में।
On Saturday, after culmination of the DDC polls, Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha thanked people of Union Territory for reposing their faith in democracy. He said people of J&K voted for a new and better tomorrow.
त्रिस्तरीय डेमोक्रेसी जबरदस्त तरीके से जम्मू कश्मीर में काम करे, इसके लिए हम सब पूरा सहयोग करेंगे। और आने वाले दिनों में डिस्ट्रिक्ट डेवलपमेंट बोर्ड का जो गठन होगा तो जिले के विकास की पूरी जिम्मेदारी चुने हुए प्रतिनिधियों को मिले और वो काम करें, इसका हम सब प्रयास करेंगे।
BJP national spokesperson and DDC election in charge, Kashmir, Shahnawaz Hussain said, people's participation in recent elections is a victory of democracy. While addressing a press conference in Srinagar, he said, people have showed their faith and trust in democratic setup.
जम्मू कश्मीर का ये डिस्ट्रिक्ट डेवलपमेंट काउंसिल का चुनाव इंडियन हिस्ट्री में सोने के अक्षर से लिखा जाएगा, क्योंकि ये पहला चुनाव है जिसके अंदर कहीं कोई हिंसा नहीं हुई, कोई झगड़ा नहीं हुआ।
Highest voting percentage was witnessed in the 7th phase, where 57.22% voters exercised their franchise. Lowest voting percentage was 48.62% in the second phase. The first phase, 51.76% voters cast their vote, while 50.53% voters exercised their franchise in the third phase. In the fourth phase, percentage was 50.08, percentage was 51.20, while in the sixth, 51.51% people cast their ballot. In the eighth and final phase, 50.98% voters exercised their franchise.
70 साल तक जो आज तक यहाँ के सियासतदान ने लोगों को धोखे में रखा था, तामीर तरक्की के नाम पे वोट ले रहे थे, उसके बदले में खुद लोग मैदान में आ रहे हैं वोट डालने के लिए, अपने बच्चों का मुस्तकबिल संवारने के लिए।
अभी जो ये वोट है, हम खुद होके इसमें पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि यहाँ पे जो आज तक खानदानी राज चल रहा था उसको हम बाहर करना चाह रहे हैं।
खुशी, पानी खुशी। हाँ।
The maiden DDC polls have significance for being the first polling activity since the abrogation of Article 370 by the centre. 7 Kashmir-centric mainstream political parties, including National Conference and People's Democratic Party, contested the elections in alliance under the banner of People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration. Newsnight Desk, DT India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the 6th India International Science Festival. It begins on the 22nd and it concludes on the 25th of December. It's a virtual festival and the theme this year is Science for Atmanirbhar Bharat and Global Welfare.
The 6th India International Science Festival will be held from 22nd to 25th of this month in order to spread awareness about science and technology in the country. It will be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on 22nd December. Giving detailed information about the India International Science Festival in New Delhi on Monday, Union Science and Technology Minister Dr. Harshvardhan said, "We don't want to stop the traditions that promote scientific thought despite COVID-19 pandemic, and so this time the festival will be held virtually."
2020 के वर्ष को ये साइंस का वर्ष कहूँ या वैज्ञानिकों का वर्ष कहूँ या वैज्ञानिकों की उपलब्धियों का वर्ष कहूँ या ये कहूँ कि द साइंटिफिक कम्युनिटी रियली रोज टू द ओकेजन इन 2020 in spite of COVID and everything, not only in India but all across the world. तो ये कोई अतिशयोक्ति शायद नहीं होगी.
The theme for this year's festival is Science for Atmanirbhar Bharat and Global Welfare. Scientific and technical efforts to attain the goals of Atmanirbhar Bharat mission will be discussed in the event. The festival is being held on the occasion of birth anniversary of renowned Indian mathematician of global repute, Srinivas Ramanujan, and this event will continue till the birth anniversary of late Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
This year's Science Festival is being organized. We are converting this particular challenge into an opportunity to showcase that we can organize one of the largest gathering of scientists, students, science lovers in society online in the online platform.
The Science Festival is being organized by Department of Science and Technology, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Ministry of Earth Sciences, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Vigyan Bharati and Department of Biotechnology, and supported by a large number of other organizations. It will be attended by a large number of students, teachers, scientists, researchers, entrepreneurs and artists. Rishi Kumar's report for DD India.
News now from across the country in our national roundup.
In Assam, 63 cadre belonging to 4 rebel outfits formally laid down their arms in a ceremony in Guwahati. The cadre belonged to 4 rebel outfits: United Liberation Front of Ahom, Independent, People's Democratic Council of Karbi Longri, Dimasa National Liberation Army and United People's Liberation Front. President Ramnath Kovind addressed the 16th convocation of the King's George Medical University, Lucknow, today through video message. In his address, President said public hospitals such as King George Medical University have played a leading role in the fight against COVID-19. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman held the 12th pre-budget consultations with leading experts in infrastructure, energy and climate change in connection with forthcoming Union Budget 2021-22 in New Delhi today. Minister of Finance has released 8th weekly installment of Rs 6,000 crore to states to meet GST compensation shortfall. Out of this, an amount of Rs 5,516 crores has been released to 23 states. An amount of 483.40 crore has been released to 3 union territories with Legislative Assembly. Ministry of Power has promulgated rules laying down the rights of consumers. While issuing these rules, Minister of State for Power R.K. Singh said these rules shall empower the consumers of electricity and added that these rules emanate from the conviction that power systems exist to serve the consumers and consumers have rights to get reliable services and quality electricity. Education Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank laid the foundation stone of permanent campus of IIIT Bhagalpur through virtual online mode. The permanent campus will have academic block, administrative block, lecture halls, among other facilities. Union Minister for Road Transport and Highways Nitin Gadkari inaugurated and laid the foundation of 14 NH projects in Telangana through virtual mode. These projects include 765.663 kilometers long roads worth over 13,000 crore rupees. Veteran Congress leader Motilal Vora passed away at the age of 93. A former Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Motilal Vora, was a Rajya Sabha member from Chhattisgarh till April this year. He also won the AICC General Secretary before the recent party reshuffle by Congress President Sonia Gandhi. President Ramnath Kovind, Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed grief over demise of Motilal Vora. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath today inaugurated and laid the foundation stone of 27 development projects worth 136 crores in Mau. Yogi Adityanath said his government has provided employment to youth in the state. Puri-Surat Express train derailed after hitting an elephant between Hatibari and Maneswar railway stations of Sambalpur division at 2 a.m. in Odisha. General Manager East Coast Railway has ordered an inquiry at senior officers level in the incident.
Well, in Jammu and Kashmir, the Minister of State for Labour and Employment Santosh Gangwar laid the foundation stone of a 100-bedded Employees State Insurance Corporation ESIC hospital at Ompura and Badgam. The Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Manoj Sinha, was present at the foundation stone laying ceremony. The 4-storied, 100-bedded hospital will be built over an area of 5 acres and it will provide services covering 23 specialities and 3 super specialities. The facility will come up at an expenditure of 160 crore rupees and is expected to be completed in the next 1.5 years. Besides that, it covers registered insured persons, and the health care facilities will also be available to the general population. The Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Manoj Sinha, said that this hospital will be completed within a deadline. The function was also attended by the National Conference leader Farooq Abdullah, who congratulated the minister and the LG for laying the foundation stone of the hospital.
पिछले 2-2.5 वर्षों में मैं कह सकता हूं और मैं देख रहा हूं कि यहाँ तरक्की की बात लोग करने लगे, सामाजिक और आर्थिक उन्नति की बात लोग करने लगे। एक नए प्रकार की हवा इन वादियों में फारूक साहब दिखाई पड़ रही है मुझे, और मैं इससे बहुत प्रसन्न हूं। अगस्त से लेकर के अभी तक स्वास्थ्य और स्वास्थ्य शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में इस यूटी ने कई नए कीर्तिमान स्थापित किए हैं। और मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूं कि 26 दिसंबर को देश के सम्माननीय प्रधानमंत्री आदरणीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी के कर कमलों से यहाँ की यूटी के लिए सेहत नाम की योजना का शुभारंभ होने जा रहा है।
मुबारक करता हूं अपने मंत्री जी को, लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर साहब को भी इनके डिपार्टमेंट को कि इन्होंने पहला अस्पताल इस रियासत में श्रीनगर में शुरू कर दिया है, वो मामा में शुरू होगा और उम्मीद करता हूं कि इसका काम जल्दी होगा। और जैसे गवर्नर साहब ने भी कहा था कि 1.5 साल में ये होना चाहिए, मैं उम्मीद करूंगा कि ये होगा और हम लोग इस अस्पताल को देखेंगे और लोग इसका फ़ायदा उठाएंगे।
US stocks opened lower on Monday as the new strain of the coronavirus in Britain raised fears of further economic disruptions. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 20.05 points, or 0.07% at the opening, to 30,159, and the S&P 500 did open lower by 25.13 points, that's 0.68%, at 3,684.28. The Nasdaq Composite also dropped 159 points, or 1.25%, to 12,596.14. This was at the opening bell. European shares also slumped on Monday as the rapid spread of the new strain of the coronavirus led to a more stringent lockdown in England and a travel ban from many countries, while a Brexit trade deal still hung in the balance. Well, after months of inaction, the US Congress is poised to vote on a $900 billion stimulus package on the 21st of December. This package will provide new assistance to individuals and businesses battered by the surging coronavirus pandemic. Now, this bill would see direct payments made to most Americans and also provide enhanced payments to unemployed people. It would expand a small business lending program and steer money to schools, airlines, transit systems and vaccination distribution. Democratic and Republican leaders of both the House of Representatives and the Senate said on Sunday that they expected it would pass with broad support. And in a celestial phenomenon not seen in nearly 400 years, the largest planet in our solar system, Jupiter and Saturn, from the perspective of observers on the Earth on Monday, appeared to align so closely that they were almost seen to be one single star in the sky. Every few years, from the perspective of Earthlings, the two planets seem to pass each other in the same general area of the sky that is known as a conjunction. Now, according to NASA, when the two planets align on this date, however, they will seem to be much closer, a great conjunction, which with only a 6 arc minutes of sky separating them, 6 arc minutes of sky separating them. So this once-in-a-lifetime event has become popularly known as the Christmas star because it happens during the holiday season. And with that, we conclude this bulletin, News Night for tonight. Thanks very much for being with us, and do remember to mask up and keep yourself safe. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.